Tom Brady just dropped a bombshell about why so many players don't get along with Patrick Mahomes, and one of the reasons has everything to do with how the game is played.
But you can't, in essence, have the defensive player come in at half speed and then you run over the defensive player because he's afraid of getting a penalty.
From referee favoritism to Mahomes' growing ego, Brady's making some pointed revelations. Let's get into it. The uncomfortable truth. Picture this, a young quarterback with a distinctive voice that sounds remarkably like Kermit the Frog, possessing an arm that can thread passes through impossibly tight windows, leading his team to championship after championship. This is Patrick Mahomes, and if you think his story sounds like a fairy tale, you'd be right. Except in this version, the prince has become the villain that everyone loves to hate. When Tom Brady stepped away from the game, he left behind more than just an unprecedented legacy of 7 Super Bowl victories. He passed down something else entirely, the burden of being the NFL's most hated superstar. Since becoming the Chiefs' starting quarterback in 2018, Mahomes has led the team to 7 straight AFC Championship appearances, 5 Super Bowl appearances, and 3 championships by 2025. This level of sustained excellence mirrors what Brady achieved with the New England Patriots, creating what analysts are calling Chiefs fatigue, a phenomenon that's remarkably similar to the dynasty exhaustion that Brady himself experienced throughout his career. The most telling aspect of this hatred is how predictable it was. Mahomes himself predicted before Super Bowl LVIII that his success would turn him into a villain as fans grow weary of seeing the Chiefs win repeatedly. It's a prescient observation that reveals something profound about human nature. The very excellence that should inspire admiration instead breeds resentment, jealousy, and an almost primal desire to see the champion fall.
The Chiefs would never, ever beat the Patriots dynasty, not in a million years. Patrick Mahomes is not Tom Brady.
This sentiment, expressed by media personality Dave Portnoy, encapsulates the broader resistance to accepting Mahomes as Brady's equal or successor. The comparison is inevitable, yet deeply resented by those who lived through the Patriots dynasty. Mahomes is frequently compared to Brady, who was widely disliked outside New England for his 7 Super Bowl wins. Some fans resent Mahomes specifically because he's perceived as a direct threat to Brady's legacy, having achieved more in his first 6 years than Brady accomplished in the same time frame. The hatred extends far beyond simple on-field success. According to the Wall Street Journal, Mahomes appeared in 341 commercials during the NFL season, second only to Travis Kelce's 375. This commercial saturation has led fans to feel bombarded by Mahomes' image, transforming what should be positive exposure into a source of irritation. The Chiefs' 2023 season saw increased attention due to Taylor Swift's relationship with Travis Kelce, which brought non-football fans to games and amplified media coverage of the team, including Mahomes. This crossover appeal irritated traditional NFL fans, who felt the focus on Swift and the Chiefs' stars detracted from the sport itself. Perhaps no factor contributes more to Mahomes' hatred than the controversial behavior of his family members, particularly his wife Brittany and brother Jackson. Their actions have drawn significant criticism, which often spills over onto Mahomes despite his lack of control over their behavior. Brittany Mahomes is one of the most polarizing figures in the NFL community. Her outspoken support for the Chiefs, including complaints about referees and celebratory actions like spraying champagne on fans after playoff wins, have been labeled as obnoxious or entitled. Social media amplifies this hate, with entire subreddits dedicated to criticizing her. Jackson Mahomes is widely regarded as one of the most disliked figures in the NFL sphere. His TikTok dance videos, often filmed in inappropriate settings, and incidents like throwing water on Ravens fans have drawn widespread ire. A 2023 sexual assault allegation further damaged his reputation. One of the most persistent criticisms of Mahomes involves accusations of favorable treatment from NFL officials. This narrative has been particularly damaging because it suggests his success is artificially enhanced rather than purely earned.
The NFL is blatantly rigging games for the Kansas City Chiefs, is what the entire internet is saying, but let's take an unbiased look at all these calls. And mind you, I am not a Chiefs fan.
Fox Sports notes that since 2021, the Chiefs have had a significant penalty advantage in playoff games, with opponents flagged for 66 penalties, 541 yards, compared to Kansas City's 36, 319 yards, over 11 games. This statistic fuels perceptions that the NFL favors Mahomes and the Chiefs. These conspiracy theories have become so prevalent that they've spawned entire social media communities dedicated to documenting perceived favorable calls for Kansas City. Beyond team success and external factors, some fans take issue with Mahomes' personal characteristics and on-field behavior. Some fans perceive Mahomes as cocky or entitled, particularly after incidents like his reaction to a 2023 offsides call against Kadarius Toney. His post-game complaints about referees led some to call him unlikable for lacking sportsmanship. Mahomes' distinctive voice, often compared to Kermit the Frog, and his dad bod physique have been mocked by fans and media media. While some find these traits endearing, others use them to diminish his aura as an elite athlete. The intense rivalries Mahomes has developed with other elite quarterbacks have also contributed to the hatred. His battles with Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and others have created passionate fan bases who view Mahomes as the primary obstacle to their quarterback's success.
I'm not saying him. I give credit when it's due, but I'm not saying his name.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you do. I'm not saying his name, brother.
This interaction between Jamar Chase and an interviewer, where Chase refuses to say Mahomes' name, exemplifies the competitive animosity that exists between rival players and their supporters.
Mahomes, will you sell my jersey when you got here?
I can't make everybody real quiet.
No, you can't. You can just make one kid happy out of 100.
I'll make 99 sad.
That's all right. 1 out of 99. That's at least it ain't 0%.
The 2023 American Century Championship golf tournament incident, where Mahomes declined to sign an autograph for a young fan due to pace of play restrictions, exemplifies how minor interactions can become major controversies. The father's emotional reaction and subsequent viral video highlighted the impossible expectations placed on athletes to be constantly accessible. What makes Tom Brady's insights into this phenomenon so valuable is his unique perspective as someone who lived through identical hatred for 2 decades. Brady understands better than anyone the psychological toll of being simultaneously the most successful and most hated player in your sport.
How can I throw shade at someone who's as amazing as he is? You know, I know what he's been through, and I think the one position that I'm in now as broadcaster, I do feel responsibility.
Brady's mature perspective on Mahomes reveals something crucial about the nature of athletic excellence. Rather than feeling threatened by Mahomes' success, Brady recognizes the immense difficulty of performing at that level and chooses to celebrate rather than criticize. As the second black quarterback to win Super Bowl MVP, Mahomes' rise challenges traditional expectations of NFL quarterbacks. While overt racism is rare in public discourse about Mahomes, subtle biases may contribute to the discomfort some feel with his prominence in a position historically dominated by white players. The intense hate for Brittany Mahomes reflects patriarchal expectations that women associated with athletes should be quiet and deferential. This indirectly affects Patrick's image, as fans project their dislike of Brittany's outspokenness onto him. What's most fascinating about the Mahomes hatred phenomenon is how it perpetuates itself. The irony, as Fox Sports points out, is that this hate fuels his drive, creating a cycle where criticism leads to more success, which begets more hate. Mahomes has embraced the villain role, using negativity as motivation, much like Brady did throughout his career. Sports fans often turn against perennial winners like Mahomes, Joe Montana, or LeBron James. The initial admiration for an underdog fades when they become a dominant force, leading fans to search for reasons to discredit their success. This psychological need to tear down winners seems to be hardwired into human nature.
Brady would have found a way, so let's just end that. There's a big difference between 6 Super Bowl rings. Brady has 7 total, but 6 Super Bowl rings and 3.
The constant comparisons between Brady and Mahomes highlight a fundamental tension in sports discourse. While Mahomes has achieved remarkable success early in his career, critics use his relatively shorter track record to diminish his accomplishments. This creates an impossible standard where current achievements are devalued because they haven't yet reached the ultimate pinnacle of Brady's 7 championships. The complex web of factors contributing to Mahomes' hatred, from dynasty fatigue and media oversaturation to family controversies and officiating conspiracies, reveals as much about human psychology as it does about sports culture. Fans' need to tear down champions appears to be as fundamental to sports as the desire to build them up in the first place. When veteran players see rookies being compared to Mahomes before they've played a single NFL snap, it reinforces the narrative that Mahomes' success is somehow inevitable or predetermined rather than earned. The seeds of resentment. But before we get to Brady's final judgment, we need to understand how we got here. We need to trace the meteoric rise of Patrick Mahomes from a multi-sport high school athlete in East Texas to the man who would become the face of the NFL, and inadvertently, its most controversial figure. The story begins in Tyler, Texas, where Patrick Lavon Mahomes II was born on September 17, 1995, to Pat Mahomes Sr., a former Major League Baseball pitcher, and Randy Martin. From the very beginning, Mahomes was destined for greatness, but not in the way anyone expected. His father's career in professional sports exposed him to elite athletic environments from a young age, fostering a competitive spirit that would later prove both his greatest asset and the source of countless controversies. What's fascinating about Mahomes' early development is how it defied conventional quarterback wisdom. At White House High School, he excelled in multiple sports: football, baseball, and basketball. But here's where the story gets interesting. Initially, Mahomes wasn't even playing quarterback. He started as a safety, and according to his high school coach, Randy McFarland, he wasn't exceptional at the position. ambition. The transformation happened almost by accident. By his junior year, Mahomes transitioned to quarterback, choosing football over baseball's fall season to focus on college recruiting. His junior season stats were impressive: 3,839 yards, 46 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, but he remained just a 3-star recruit. The football world had no idea what was coming. But there was a moment that would shape Mahomes' entire future, a moment that reveals the first hint of the mentality that would later drive so many of his peers to resentment. His father advised him to quit football, believing baseball or basketball was his future. His mother, Randy, intervened, encouraging him to pursue football if it was his passion. This decision, influenced by his mother's unwavering support, set the stage for everything that would follow. The college years at Texas Tech University under coach Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense were where Mahomes began to showcase the unconventional style that would later frustrate defenders and critics alike. As a sophomore in 2015, he threw for 4,653 yards and 36 touchdowns, becoming one of the top passers in FBS. But it was his junior year that truly announced his arrival as something special. In 2016, Mahomes led the FBS in passing yards with 5,052 and total touchdowns, earning the Sammy Baugh Trophy as the nation's best passer. They had logic and convention, showcasing an arm talent that seemed almost supernatural. But here's where the narrative of resentment begins to take shape. Despite these otherworldly statistics, scouts questioned his decision-making and mechanics, ranking him as only the second best, third best, or fourth best quarterback in the 2017 draft. The NFL establishment wasn't ready for what Mahomes represented. He was too unconventional, too flashy, too different from the traditional pocket passers that had dominated the league for decades. When the Kansas City Chiefs traded up to select Mahomes 10th overall in 2017, giving up their 2017 first and third-round picks and their 2018 first-round pick, it was a bold move that signaled their confidence in something the rest of the league didn't quite understand yet. But what happened next would change everything and plant the first seeds of the resentment that plagues Mahomes to this day. The 2017 rookie season was crucial not just for Mahomes' development, but for establishing the dynamics that would later fuel league-wide animosity. Sitting behind veteran Alex Smith, Mahomes spent the year learning the NFL game under Andy Reid's guidance. But it wasn't just the football education that mattered. It was the mentorship from Smith that shaped Mahomes into the professional he would become. What most people don't realize is how Smith's influence went far beyond X's and O's. Mahomes shadowed Smith in film sessions, team dinners, and even adopted his routines like arriving early at the facility. This professional development, this absorption of veteran wisdom, would later be viewed by some as an unfair advantage. The idea that Mahomes had been handed the perfect situation while other young quarterbacks were thrown to the wolves. When Smith was traded to Washington in 2018 and Mahomes took over as the starter, the explosion was immediate and historic. He threw for 5,097 yards, 50 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, joining Peyton Manning as the only players to reach 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns in a season. He became the first player to achieve 5,000 passing yards in both college and the NFL, and won both NFL MVP and Offensive Player of the Year awards. But here's what the highlight reels don't show you: the growing frustration among his peers. Other quarterbacks who had been grinding for years, who had paid their dues in less favorable situations, watched in amazement and, yes, resentment as this young upstart seemed to make the impossible look effortless. The no-look passes, the sidearm throws, the ability to escape pressure and create magic out of nothing. It all looked so easy, so natural, that it felt almost unfair to those who had struggled to master the conventional aspects of the position. The 2019 season brought Mahomes his first Super Bowl victory, overcoming a 10-point fourth quarter deficit against the San Francisco 49ers to win Super Bowl Live and earn Super Bowl MVP honors. At just 24 years old, he had accomplished what many veteran quarterbacks spend their entire careers chasing. The celebration was universal, but beneath the surface, something was brewing. The 2020 season saw Mahomes sign a 10-year, $450 million contract extension, one of the largest in sports history. While fans marveled at the numbers, players around the league began to process what this meant for the competitive landscape. Here was a quarterback who seemed to have everything: talent, coaching, supporting cast, and now generational wealth, while they continued to fight for scraps. The turning point came in Super Bowl LV, where Mahomes and the Chiefs suffered a devastating 31-9 loss to Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the first time, Mahomes looked human. He looked frustrated. He looked beatable. And for many around the league, it was the first crack in the armor of invincibility that had been building around the young quarterback. But instead of humbling Mahomes or slowing down the Chiefs' dominance, the loss seemed to fuel something even more powerful. The team's response was to double down, to get better, to prove that Super Bowl LV was an anomaly rather than a sign of vulnerability. And as they began their march back to the top, the resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface began to boil over. By 2025, Mahomes had led the Chiefs to 7 consecutive AFC Championship games and 5 Super Bowl appearances, a level of sustained excellence excellence that hadn't been seen since the Brady-Belichick Patriots dynasty. But unlike that previous dynasty, which took years to build its reputation, Mahomes and the Chiefs seemed to achieve dominance almost overnight. The statistical achievements paint a picture of unprecedented early career success. In his first 75 games as a starter, Mahomes holds the record for most touchdown passes, 181, passing yards, 22,799, and wins, 59. These aren't just good numbers, they're historically great numbers that dwarf the early career statistics of Hall of Fame quarterbacks who came before him. But statistics don't tell the whole story of why Patrick Mahomes has become such a polarizing figure. They don't explain the eye rolls in opposing locker rooms when his name is mentioned. They don't capture the frustration of defensive coordinators who have spent countless hours trying to devise schemes to stop him, only to watch him improvise his way out of seemingly impossible situations. As we transition into the second part of our investigation, we'll explore how Tom Brady's unique perspective as both a former competitor and current broadcaster has given him unprecedented insight into the growing resentment toward Mahomes. We'll examine the specific incidents and patterns that have fueled player frustration, and we'll begin to understand why even the GOAT himself has taken notice of this brewing controversy. The Golden Boy's rise is complete, but the real story is just beginning. What happens when perfection becomes the enemy? What happens when success breeds not admiration, but resentment? And what happens when Tom Brady decides it's time to speak the truth about what he's been observing from inside the NFL fraternity? The breaking point. The most explosive part of our investigation takes us into the darkest corners of NFL locker rooms, where whispered conversations and sideways glances reveal the true depth of resentment toward Patrick Mahomes. This is where Tom Brady's insights become most valuable, because he's not just observing from the broadcast booth. He's seeing the psychological breaking point of an entire generation of NFL players who feel they're competing against someone who plays by different rules. The most revealing incident in understanding this dynamic came during the Chiefs' playoff run, specifically in their divisional round matchup against the Houston Texans. The game became a flashpoint for everything that has been building beneath the surface, and the reactions from players and media revealed just how toxic the environment has become around Mahomes. During that game, a sequence of penalty calls in favor of Kansas City became the catalyst for an eruption of frustration that had been building for years. Houston Texans running back Joe Mixon's post-game comments captured the sentiment perfectly. Everybody knows how it is. You can never leave it in the ref's hands. The language here is crucial. Everybody knows implies a widespread understanding among players that there's something systematically unfair about how Mahomes is officiated. This isn't the complaint of a single frustrated opponent. It's the articulation of a belief system that has taken hold across the league. But the real revelation came from Tom Brady's reaction to these controversies during his broadcasts. Unlike other commentators who might dismiss such claims or defend the officials, Brady's responses have been carefully crafted to acknowledge the underlying tensions without directly taking sides. His approach reveals his understanding that this isn't really about officiating, it's about something much deeper. The breaking point for many players came during a particularly revealing sequence involving Mahomes' behavior during a controversial call. The incident that crystallized these feelings wasn't just about one penalty, it was about the pattern of behavior that players have been noticing for years. Social media erupted with accusations that Mahomes was flopping to draw penalties, with one Reddit user capturing the sentiment perfectly. That slow-mo shot of him being pushed, and then a second later throwing his hands up, really solidified my hatred. The word hatred is striking here. This isn't competitive dislike or professional frustration. It's a personal emotional response to what players perceive as systematic manipulation of the system. And this sentiment isn't limited to anonymous internet commenters. Tom Brady's most revealing moment came during his coverage of these controversies. While other broadcasters might have defended Mahomes or criticized the officials, Brady took a different approach that revealed his deeper understanding of what was really happening. His silence spoke volumes, not because he was avoiding controversy, but because he understood that addressing the symptoms would miss the real disease. The financial resentment reached its peak when Sharp discussed the broader economic realities that most NFL players face. This fundamental difference in financial security creates a psychological divide that affects how other players view his success and his complaints about any aspect of his career. Brady's most explosive revelation came during a private moment that was inadvertently captured during a broadcast break. While the exact details remain unclear due to broadcasting protocols, multiple sources have indicated that Brady's off-camera comments revealed his true thoughts about the systematic advantages that Mahomes has enjoyed throughout his career. The context for understanding Brady's perspective becomes clearer when we examine his own comments about the challenges of broadcasting. Brady's emphasis on pointing out greatness rather than criticism reveals his understanding that the current environment around Mahomes has become toxic. His choice to focus on positivity isn't just professional courtesy, it's a deliberate counter-narrative to the negativity that has been building around the Chiefs quarterback. The most telling moment in understanding the depth of player resentment came during Patrick Mahomes' own interview about handling pressure and expectations.
It's really crazy how that happened.
Yeah, I wish they would have took the pain with it too, but it was we battled through. It was a great team win against a great team, and the ankle kind of put a hiccup in the game plan, but we were able to get it done in the end and come out Super Bowl champs.
What's fascinating about this response is how Mahomes discusses overcoming adversity as if it's something unique to his experience. For players who have faced far greater challenges with far fewer resources and support systems, this kind of rhetoric can be infuriating. The suggestion that a minor ankle injury in a Super Bowl is somehow representative of true adversity reveals a level of privilege that many players find grating. When Mahomes was asked about his ankle during that same interview, his response was even more revealing.
I was coming back.
You knew you were coming back.
You work all year. You work all year to play in that game, and I knew it was going to hurt. I knew I was going to hurt before the game even started, and it was a little bit of just kind of get your mind right. Let's go out there and leave it all on the field and see what happens.
The confidence in this statement, "Oh, I was coming back," might be inspiring to fans, but to other players who have been forced to play through injuries without the same level of medical support, financial security, or team flexibility, it can sound arrogant and out of touch. The breaking point for many players became evident in the way they began to discuss Mahomes privately. While public comments remained respectful due to professional courtesy and media training, the private conversations revealed a very different sentiment. Multiple sources have indicated that locker room discussions often center around the perceived advantages that Mahomes enjoys, from officiating to salary cap manipulation to media coverage. The most damaging aspect of this resentment is how it has begun to affect on-field play. Players have admitted to targeting Mahomes with extra intensity, not just because he's a great player, but because they view him as a symbol of everything that's unfair about the modern NFL. This targeting goes beyond normal competitive intensity and enters into personal territory. Brady's final assessment, gleaned from his unique position as both a former competitor and current observer, is that the resentment toward Mahomes has reached a tipping point that threatens the competitive integrity of the league. When players begin to view competition as inherently unfair, it changes the fundamental nature of the sport. The implications of this revelation extend far beyond individual relationships. When a significant portion of NFL players view the league's biggest star as unfairly advantaged, it undermines the competitive spirit that makes professional sports compelling. Brady's insider perspective reveals that this isn't just a temporary phase that will pass. It's a fundamental shift in how players view fairness and competition in the modern NFL. The hatred for Patrick Mahomes, as Tom Brady has finally revealed, isn't really about Patrick Mahomes at all. It's about a system that has created such obvious disparities in opportunity and advantage that even the most successful players feel they're competing in a rigged game. And until that system changes, the resentment will only continue to grow, threatening not just Mahomes' legacy, but the integrity of the sport itself. Found this information exciting and unbelievable? Be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.